Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us live. This is the Voice of Reason podcast, and today we have an extremely special episode for you guys. We have all kinds of different guests. And first and foremost, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sean Phillips. As always, I am joined by my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and the one and only Travis Kirkendall.
Good evening,
But that
everybody.
is not it. Today, we have several different guests who I will introduce, and then we will get the conversation kicking. First and foremost, we have Mr. Mike Vinson, a police officer from Bloomfield, Missouri, Mr. Clint Weir, a police officer in Pittsfield, Illinois, and Mr. David Greenwood, the sheriff of Pike County, Illinois. Gentlemen, how are the three of you doing this evening?
Doing well.
Doing good, thanks.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
Good.
Well, I will. I wanted to thank you guys all for being on tonight, and so we kind of know what you guys know what our rules are. We really don't have any rules, except that we try to keep we work on Sean keeping his swearing to a minimum, but that's a work in progress. But what we will do is we have a series of questions, and please feel free at any time just to chime in on what your responses are going to be. And just to give you guys a little bit of an introduction, Vinny, we'll start with you. Why don't you just give us, each one of you guys will go with Vinny, and then Sheriff will go to you, and then Clint will end with you. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been in law enforcement and why you've gone into law enforcement, if you want to start with that.
All right. As Sean said, my name is Deputy Mike Vinson. I work for the Stoddard County Sheriff's Office down here in Bloomfield, Missouri. I've been in law enforcement approximately 6 years. I started in dispatch, and that's really where I got my knack for it and really wanted to start. Got the knack to go to the academy to go on the road and try and make a difference in the community down here. I've been in a total of 6 years, 3 in dispatch, almost 3 on the road. In my opinion, it's the best decision I've ever made in my life. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping the people down here in Stoddard County as best as I can. That's just kind of a little bit about me.
Great. Sheriff, if you would.
Yeah, my name is Dave Greenwood. I'm the sheriff of Pike County. I've been in law enforcement about 21 years. I started in the jail. I worked there for about 1.5 years and then got on the road. And about 2.5 years ago, I was elected sheriff. And it's a great job. It's very fulfilling. I couldn't really think of doing anything other than this. How I got started in it was probably watching the Andy Griffith show, Barney Fife. He's
awesome. But you do have you do have bullets in your gun, correct, Sheriff?
I have one in my pocket.
Okay, well that's all we need.
One in my pocket.
All right.
So no, but yeah, it's just a great job. My grandfather was in law enforcement for a little while, and who's also Clint's great grandfather.
Wow.
So well, with that, Clint.
All right, Clint.
Yeah. What an introduction, Dave. Thank you.
Hey. Anything for you?
My name is Clint Weir. I work for the Pittsfield City Police, which is a small department inside of Pike County where David is the sheriff. And I've been in law enforcement for about 13 years total. I'm gonna kind of, I guess, regurgitate what those guys said. I love serving the community. I love helping people. And there's no greater time than right now where we need law enforcement with ethics and morals. And I believe I have that. So that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you. And I'll start out with this, and I know we'll go back and forth between Travis and Sean and myself, but I think I just want to start out with, fellas, is just this question. You guys can answer this however you want to, in whatever order. We won't go any specifics there. But in 2021, I mean, obviously, Sheriff, you have the most law enforcement experience, and going back to 2001, what do you think has become the greatest challenge for law enforcement, especially on, I mean, not only on this level, but on all levels? What do you think has become the greatest challenge for you?
Probably the biggest challenge is the recent goings on in the country. You mentioned back to 2001, you had 9/11. Law enforcement was and fire was looked at as heroes. And now it's just the opposite. For whatever reason, law enforcement's being vilified right now. And, in Illinois, we have these new laws that are being passed. And be thankful in Missouri you don't have those. Hopefully they don't come your way. But the recent, like I said, goings on are probably the biggest challenge right now. Trying to maneuver through these new laws that are being passed.
Well, if you could expand on that a little bit, Sheriff, what kind of laws are you having to deal with?
Well, the Illinois legislature just passed a huge bill, kind of in the middle of the night. It was at the end of January, and it's really some of it goes into effect. A lot of it goes into effect July 1st, and it's really going to limit law enforcement's ability to do the job with some of the issues that are in, or some of the things that are in the bill. I don't have it in front of me. I probably should have, so I could directly go to some of those. But it's really going to be a challenge trying to get through this, and we will do what we need to do. That's what we're here to do, and we'll get through it. But it's definitely going to be a big challenge.
So, Mike, you're down in obviously in a different part of the country down there. What do you feel is your greatest challenge down in Stoddard County as a deputy down there?
Well, down here, and it's not just down here. The sheriff and Officer Weir can attest to this. Your biggest obstacle, in my opinion, is you always have eyes on you everywhere you go. You got eyes on you. You have a camera pointed at you. It doesn't matter what you do. You have hundreds of thousands of eyes on you. And, it's a challenge anyway to do our job to the best of our ability, not to mention dealing with some of the individuals that I've dealt with on a personal level down here that aren't exactly cooperative, and then you got 6, 7, 8 sets of eyes on you. So and I hate to make it sound like you want to take it too far, but sometimes you have to go a little further than what you normally would. But you also got to kind of keep yourself in check, because you've got all them eyes on you. You got cameras pointed at you. People are always taking phones. I can't tell you how many calls I've been to where you get to and you look around and you got about 10 cell phones pointed at you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to address that issue a little bit more later. Clint, what about you? What do you feel is your greatest challenge as a city police officer here in Pittsfield?
Yeah, I'm echoing what those guys said again. I think Dave, obviously, as the sheriff, here in Illinois, we're facing some uphill battles when it comes to our government. Seems like every time we feel like we're getting ahead, we go back. But I would agree with Deputy from Missouri. The fact that there's just so much pressure on law enforcement, added pressure, as if we don't have enough pressure already, but there's added pressure knowing that no matter what you do, you're being watched. And officer safety, I'm not going to say that 20 years ago was any different, but 20 years ago was different. In the fact that when you were responding or walking up to a vehicle or dealing with situations, it just was different than it is today. A lot more safety, a lot more safety issues that you really have to pay attention to as far as officer safety and protecting each other. So,
and we do have a couple of comments already. One of our listeners said, "Thank you for your service." And Travis's brother, who is actually he has since retired from the force, but he said, St. Louis County Police Department, been there, done that, and appreciate all the men that in the blue, and I know how tough it is. So thank you, Cody, for chiming in with us tonight. I'll just ask one more, and then I'll let the fellows chime in. And this may be getting deep into the meat right now, but we kind of touched about this already. Do you, and again, I'll just, whoever wants to go first, and maybe Sheriff, you can address this too. Do you think that police work in the last 5 years has become more politicized, and if so, why?
Yeah, absolutely. It has, not really on the local level so much, at the state and national level. I think it is. The why is for simple political gain. Right now, obviously with the George Floyd stuff going on, and the other shootings around the nation,
Do you feel like you have? I mean, obviously, I mean, how much control do you, as sheriff? I mean, you again, we go back to the state legislature. How much do you feel? I mean, do you really feel like you're constrained more in a box than what you were 20 years ago?
yes, or about to be, with the new bill that was passed.
Mm-hmm.
They're restricting. I don't even know if the right word is restricting. They're just. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it. It's almost like they're setting police officers up in a trap to get them caught. Like they're one of the things in the new bill, they're mandating body cameras, which is a good thing. We already have some body cameras going, but in that same bill, it states that an officer cannot view the body camera prior to writing the report. Okay. So it's kind of the nonsense like that that's is really setting officers up for a fall. If an officer gets out of his car and does not activate his body camera, they can be charged with a Class 3 felony of official misconduct. Again, it's things like that that setting officers up for a fall, and it just seems like it's being done on purpose, and it goes back to that political part of it.
Either one of you other fellows want to comment on that one, Clint or Vinny? Do you guys feel that the job has been politicized more, or how do you guys feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with the sheriff. You know, you got so much. I mean, you guys know as well as I do with the George Floyd ordeal, you know, and you can go, you know, with the riots out on the West Coast. You're getting nowhere anymore. Your hands are tied when it comes to certain things, and you're kind of left to where you don't really know what to do. You know, you're being restricted on the job that you swore that you protect and serve, but how can you do that when you're being restricted on what you can and can't do? And it's just and I think it's honestly it's getting worse, you know, year by year, which, you know, I've only been on the road for 3 years, but I sat in dispatch for 3 years, and I can tell a huge difference from when I first started in dispatch to now being on the road. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Clint, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I believe that unfortunately we probably have some politicians who are utilizing the horrific tragedies like George Floyd and such for their political gain. All of those scenarios, all of those situations, all of those instances are horrific tragedies and obviously should not be used for political gain. But unfortunately, I think that there's probably some government officials that are utilizing that.
Mm-hmm. Sean, you had a few. Why don't you go ahead and ask a few there, pal?
Yeah, one of the first things I wanted to ask you guys is when you witness, you know, a footage, or when we see incidents where law enforcement's in the wrong, you know, being, you know, negligent and not following the training that you guys actually receive, how frustrating is that? Just kind of knowing in the back of your head, like, shit, that, you know, my job's already hard. Now this comes out, and, you know, where does your head go from there each time something comes out like this?
Well, on my part, it's just irritating. It's kind of, if you go to the gun issue, I'm a big pro gun guy. Every time you see another, they call them mass shootings, it's like, oh no, here we go. You know, they're going to clamp down a little bit more. When you see these, the George Floyd's a perfect example. The images of that was horrible. You know, I wasn't there. I can't say what was done wrong. It sure looked wrong. But you know, it looked horrible. And unfortunately, there's a human being that was killed. And what the reason was, I don't have a clear picture on what the reason was. You know, it just depends on who you listen to. But that, all that stuff, these shootings, just they don't help. They hurt us all.
Yeah, I have to agree with the sheriff. You know, when I was in the academy, they beat it into our head for 5.5 months. Make sure you walk through your door and you go home at night. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, with the George Floyds and the shootings and everything, you start thinking, well, okay, yeah, I need to make sure I go home at night, but what if I screw up? You know, what if I do something wrong, and then, you know, like I said, like the sheriff said, I wasn't there. You know, with the George Floyd thing, it did not look good at all. I mean, I don't know. Of course, you know, we can only go off of what we're told. Mm-hmm. And everybody who's anybody knows how the media is with what they want to say and what they don't, you know, or how they want to spin it. But it didn't look good. And therefore, then all eyes turn to you, no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to pay for what happened miles and miles and miles away from you, because mm-hmm. now you get the blowback of it.
Well, that's what
because you're in the line.
And I want to follow up with that real quick, Mike. If I could say this, do you feel that not only, and Sheriff mentioned this earlier about how obviously legislatures are turning you in a corner. Do you think that the media has, I mean, obviously, I'll just use, for example, the young lady up in Minneapolis who went for her gun instead of her taser. I mean, honestly, could you speak to that? I mean, in the heat of the moment, I'm obviously there is a way to get that confused, but how do you guys orient yourself in that way? And do you think the media is trying to paint her out to be a villain?
You have to make the split-second decision on what force you use. And it may be wrong, and it may not. I mean, in the heat of the moment when tensions are high, and, you know, your adrenaline's running 90-0. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the, you know, I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't get to see it. You know, I wasn't there with her. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. But you just have to make that right decision on your use of force. And then you have to justify that use of force. You always have to explain later on why.
Okay.
I think what a lot of people seem to forget when we look at situations like this is, I can't say there's probably every single person in the world has experienced an event, and it doesn't even have to be something that involves like a physical confrontation, but everyone on earth has experienced an event where they leave it and they go, man, I should have done this different, or I should have said this, or I should have done this. Now, when people rope every single individual, every single police officer in the same box as, you know, no one knows exactly what it's like in that fight or flight moment. You know, if you know, I've, as a military police officer, and even when I was bouncing at bars, you know, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what the situation's going to dictate. And unfortunately, there are further consequences when, as opposed to how you react in a street fight or as opposed to being a law enforcement agent. But for every, video that we see where something goes wrong, we've also seen hundreds of videos of where something goes wrong and the police officer ends up paying for their life or gets seriously hurt. It sucks. No situation is the same. And that kind of brings up my next question is, March of 2003, I believe, was a little incident that the military, the Army in particular, had paid a lot for, was the Abu Ghraib prison incident, where military police officers took photos and positioned war prisoners that they had in horrific photos, and it was a really bad situation. Ever since that date, we've at military police school at Fort Leonard Wood, they've added a specific week of training just around that incident. What are some things that you guys might like to see added to, whether it's yearly training or added on at the academy or locally? What is some extra training that you guys could see added on in your precincts and your departments that might actually benefit you guys?
Clint, we'll let you talk.
Hey, yeah, I think for our department, I think that some more, maybe some training as far as just communication, talking. A lot of our new cadets, younger guys, seem to struggle with just communicating. And I can't speak for all law enforcement, but I know that in my time with law enforcement, 90%, maybe even 95% of the situations I've been involved in are taken care of in verbal judo, communication, and talking. Now, again, that's Pittsfield, Illinois, a town of 5,000, Pike County, 17,000. So, I mean, there's a lot of different cases, a lot of different situations, but I think more training when it comes to communication would benefit us a lot.
Sheriff, what do you think? What do you think, Sheriff?
Well, with the new bill, there's a lot of issues in there with training, and they're going to require more training. Some of the training I think is unnecessary, the sensitivity type training and stuff. But I do agree with Clint on the communication thing. We have a major interstate going through Pike County, and a lot of the contacts we make are from people from Chicago, from different cities, and some training on we're kind of to see the way other people see law enforcement. Somebody from the inner city, the way they may see me as a police officer, and maybe try to understand how they see me, so that helps me react to them. So training like that, I guess would help.
Yeah. Well, that's the good thing about communication in Pittsfield. I feel like, when you deal with so many people that are just ripping a bunch of crystal meth, probably 5 minutes of talking to them will probably bring them down to that next level of yeah, shit, you're probably right. I guess I won't hit her too many more times today. Yeah.
What
today though?
Travis, what do you got?
First of all, let me just say, gentlemen, thank you guys for your time. I know it's late here on a Monday night, but we really do appreciate it. Couple questions I have for you guys. One being, we're seeing the recent movements of police reform, people saying defund the police, demilitarize the police, a lot of crazy reforms people are pushing for. If you want to get into each one, you can, but I'm just kind of curious what your all's thoughts are on it. I think we all agree that defund the police isn't necessarily the answer, but I'm a little curious on the demilitarize the police, what your all's thoughts are on that. Because I know obviously it's a little different, Pike County, Illinois versus here in Chicago, but just curious what your all's thoughts are on it from a professional standpoint.
I think defunding the police is nonsense. I think if you went into those neighborhoods, some of the inner cities, and actually asked the residents there, do you want to defund the police? Do you want less police on the streets? I think they probably would say no. So I think defunding is nonsense. When you hear people say that. But I just I kind of lost my train of thought there where I was going. So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with the sheriff. I think it's ignorant, and the problem with it is the majority of the people that are screaming defund the police, they're the first ones to pick up the phone and call when they need help.
Yep.
Oh, come help me. I got this going on. I got that going on. Joe Blow down the street won't leave me alone. Well, you wanted to defund the police. Well, but we'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think it's ignorant. I think it's nonsense.
Clint, what do you say?
When you mention demilitarize the police, are you just referring to lowering the amount of equipment that police have, as far as semi-automatics, flashbangs, and things like that? What do you?
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus of all the stuff I was reading about the movement. Just kind of curious what your all's thoughts are on that.
I guess maybe shooting from the hip here, no pun intended. I feel like we're in a world today where it seems like anything can happen, and I think that police need to have the capability, the resource to protect and to serve no matter what comes their way. And if that means armored vehicles, if that means night vision scopes, if that means whatever, I think that we deserve to have the resources necessary. Now, in Pittsfield, do we need an armored tank? Not yet.
Hell yeah.
But even maybe as close as 60 miles away in Springfield, Illinois, they may. I don't know. We have semi-automatic weapons in our squads along with the sheriff. Flashbangs, I don't have those, but so that's my thought.
So what do you guys believe is what to you, and again, Sheriff, I'm going to pick on you a little bit here. What do you feel is the worst case scenario that you can see happening with some of this new legislation coming down the line?
I think, I guess for a lack of a better word, is nutting law enforcement. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Making it not law enforcement. Law enforcement's a unique situation. I kind of understand why when they see something bad on TV, they blame all cops. If a plumber does something wrong, you don't blame all plumbers or electricians. But law enforcement, it's the only profession where we can walk up to somebody on the street and take all their rights away. And there's no other profession. A judge can't do that. The president can't do that. So I understand, people lumping everybody together. But my biggest fear out of this legislation is, like I said, is taking, not letting police do what they know they need to do, what they're trained to do. We're now going to be trained by state senators and state representatives who know absolutely nothing about law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Travis. I cut you off there.
That's a really good point. I had one more question for you, gentlemen, and it's kind of relation to all the crazy stuff going on. Something people don't really talk about, and we hear about it in the military all the time, is like PTSD and the stuff that soldiers see and have to deal with. But you don't really hear about that with law enforcement, even though I know for a fact law enforcement see a lot of bad things, and they are exposed to a lot of very stressful and crazy situations. And I was thinking about this today, and my question is, does where you guys work at, do they have programs in place to help officers who maybe need to talk to a counselor, or maybe they're having a lot of stuff going on just because work's just crazy. Like, is there programs in place to help officers
And can
in
I
these
chirp
situations?
just a quick thing on top of that? Do these programs come with a stigma that sometimes they do within the military about seeking mental health counseling?
In a small department like ours, really no stigma. We're all pretty close. If somebody needs help, yeah, they're going to get help. In our policy, it actually states that if they're involved in a shooting or something traumatic, yeah, they have to go through some kind of, talking to a counselor. Of course, those things don't happen a lot here, but they have. Yeah, there's really not much of a stigma, at least in our department.
Good.
Vinny, what do you got on this? What do you
That's the
say?
same way with our department, like the sheriff said with theirs. We're all pretty close knit. We're pretty tight. If you go through any kind of traumatic event like that, you have to go through, to the evaluation and everything else. Several years ago, matter of fact, I won't name any names from my department, where I had a deputy when I was working dispatch, was running code to a call. He had a gentleman that was riding I believe a moped of some kind, wearing earbuds, listening to music, really loud music. Somehow did not hear him running code, lights, and sirens. That's neither here nor there. And crossed in front of the deputy on 25 highway while he was running about 65, 70 mile an hour. And he struck him with his vehicle. Of course, it killed him, and he had to go, go to several doctors and whatnot. And I think he's doing really well now. He don't work for us anymore, works for another department. He's moved up the command chain. But I think it still affects him, from time to time. He don't really talk about it much. Every once in a while, he'll bring it up, but it does. Things like that do affect you, and I haven't luckily dealt with anything personally like that.
Clint, what do you think?
Well, I know that statistics would show that law enforcement is maybe not maybe, I know they're in the top 5 of suicide. I think they're probably in maybe the top 10 in divorce. So there's statistics out there that show that it does wear on you. We usually don't show up to a scene and people are applauding we're there.
Right.
So most of the time people don't want to see us, and we have parents that when we show up, they're telling their kids that we're going to take them to jail, and that's all fun and people laugh about it and it's cute in the moment, but I mean that wears on you,
Yeah.
So
yeah. You guys like the New York Jets. You walk out there and everyone starts booing you. Like, ah, shit.
It's like our governor at the White Sox game.
Go back to what Clint just said. I mean, I don't know how these guys are, but I tell parents all the time, stop telling your children we're going to take them to jail.
Yeah.
Stop telling them we're going to take them to jail because they're not being good. What if they need us one of these days? What if they have to pick up the phone and call us for you because something's happened to you and they're scared to death to do it because you told them that we'll take them to jail if they're bad?
Exactly.
Right.
I told several parents, please don't tell your kids that we're bad people and we'll take them to jail because they might need us one day.
And sometimes, depending on the parents, you look at the kid and you think, yeah, one day I probably will be taking him to jail. Just kidding. That's just a joke.
Oh, no.
So,
It'd be the best thing for him.
Yeah. So if you guys look at this and we can look at, I mean, there's tons of people who have their input on this. Don't you think one thing that really bothers me about this is that we're not focusing on the fact of why these events happen in the first place. If, the incident up in Minnesota, if the George Floyds, if the Michael Brown down in Ferguson, part of me, and this is where I get angry at stuff like this, is because when it comes down, the first thing that I want to tell these guys is don't break the law. don't break the law. And what bothers me is, okay, I've read a ton of commentary from African American leaders in different cities who, and I actually saw a video one of my students sent to me the other day. He says, I don't, this is a black man as black as it gets, and he's just like, I do not honor George Floyd. He broke the law. He was high on meth. He had tried to pass a bad check, and a police officer, he didn't take care of it properly. But there's part of me that says, yes, we should still have this person around, but at the same time, you broke the law. How do you approach that kind of criticism when somebody says, they catch the first part, like Michael, you were saying earlier, how you get there and everybody's got their cameras on. Okay. Did they record 10 seconds before when the crime was being committed? So
No.
And I think that's a problem. How do you guys, and I know, Clint, you mentioned verbal judo and all this other stuff. When you come into the situation, and you guys have all talked about coming in code 3 or coming in code and just like, okay, what's going to be, how do you get yourself ready for that mindset for these guys who have possibly broken the law and know that there's going to be those cameras waiting on you? How do you approach those situations?
Well, it's hard to answer that question with all of the unfortunate situations out there. It's hard to put yourself in every scenario where someone's life was taken and come up with that statement if they would have just followed the law. But here's the truth. The truth is, and I can't swear to every situation, but in most of those situations, if the person would have just listened to the police officer, the possible guarantee would be they're still alive at least. Mm-hmm. Again, that's not a blanket statement. That doesn't work in all the situations. But if you look at video, horrific video, no doubt, where police have made mistakes, many mistakes. If you go back to the very beginning of those scenarios, most of them were because the individual did not listen to the commands of the police.
And Clint, that actually echoes with one of our viewers tonight. Said if you do break the law, comply and do your time. You don't see very many people dying by police while complying. I'm going to go ahead and play devil's advocate though. But if we look at the incident that happened in Virginia 2 weeks ago with the young lieutenant, I believe he was being pulled over. He was in uniform, and I look at that police officer. I think Sean said his name was Officer Gutierrez, I believe, and it's not even a race thing.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was. The police officer was Latino. When it comes down to it, why do you think that? And I know you guys don't fall in this category, but what would you hypothesize that the reason is why we do see a lot of race-based? People. They say profiling. Do you feel that profiling is a real thing that happens in some departments, or is that by a region thing, or what do you guys think about that?
It's easy for people to scream race. It's just because it's there and everything that's been going on. That's the first thing they want to go to. It doesn't matter where you're at. If you're white on white, white on black, black on black, it doesn't matter. It don't matter. That race card, I've dealt with people of all races, and it doesn't matter if they're white, black, blue, orange, purple, yellow. It don't matter. They always end up pulling the race card. Mm-hmm. And it's just like it's an easy out. Mm-hmm. The way I look at it, mm-hmm. It's an easy out for them.
Mm-hmm. Sheriff, what do you think?
Profiling is actually an actual part of law enforcement. You need to profile sometimes. If the call comes in, you're looking for a black male wearing a red cap and a blue shirt. You're not going to pull over a white male with no cap and a green shirt,
right?
So there is reasons to profile, mm-hmm. But just blatant pulling over somebody because they're black or because they're Hispanic or because they're white. Yeah, that shouldn't happen, in a perfect world.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just lose everybody there?
No, we still have you. We still got you.
Okay, my screen just went black.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, and back to the other question about people obeying the laws. Yeah, that's true. If they don't break the laws, they're none of this would happen. If that young man that was shot by the lady who thought she had the taser, if he would have just complied, he would be alive right now. He probably would have went, posted bond, and been out of jail. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I first started on the road, a sergeant pointed out some guys that were visiting at the jail, and he said he arrested his grandfather, he arrested his dad, and I arrested his son. So some of this stuff is things that law enforcement's not going to be able to handle. A lot of these are family issues. Sometimes these kids in these small towns here that are just stricken with poverty, or the inner cities. Sometimes you have families where these kids grow up thinking there's what we think is a law that is illegal. They look at things as, well, I was brought up, we don't look at that as illegal, and then I'm just going to follow what grandpa and dad did and follow their footsteps. So there's a lot more than law enforcement can fix here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So how do you guys, what kind of presence do you all want to try to make? Do you guys, so you mentioned young people, Sheriff, do you all try to target younger citizens when you see them to try to make, obviously I know what the answer is. This is probably more, but a silly question, but what kind of relationship do you want to maintain or try to maintain with the younger generations?
And start when they're little. When an officer sees them on the street, don't just walk by and ignore them. Just reach down and shake their hand, give them a high five, let them know that we're friendly. Also do that with their parents. Say hi to their parents if they're walking with their parents. Let that kid see that interaction with law enforcement is not a bad thing, and hopefully that can change things. We have a DARE program. As a matter of fact, Clint's a DARE officer, so he can probably expound more on that. But you just doing these community things and getting involved with children, hopefully it'll change a couple minds.
Yeah, Clint, why don't you share with us a little bit about your time as a DARE officer and how that has worked with the being within the community and everything.
Well, we're a blessed community because our community is pro-police. We have an incredible amount of people who love our law enforcement, and they verbally state it, not just verbally, but social media and things of that nature. But as far as school resource work, there's no greater time than now for law enforcement to be in the schools. And I think there's a mindset out there where people believe that having police in schools is not right. It causes alarm or whatever the case may be. But I've built so many great relationships with students from, third grade, fifth grade, and even freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors right now that will stop and talk to me along the roadway and have conversation with me and share stuff that's going on in their lives with me. So it's just an incredible bridge to that generation.
So, and Michael, I'll ask you this too. When you go to, since you're and just to give everybody a little bit of a geography lesson down there in the Boot Hill, you have, you guys are pretty. I lived 7 years of my life down there, and it is, once you get down below Cape Girardeau, you're pretty much isolated out in the middle of nowhere there.
Cannet, Missouri.
Well, yeah.
They wear shoes down there, or?
Sometimes.
Yeah. So do you guys, what kind of presence do you guys try to maintain within your youth community and stuff like that?
We also have a DARE program at our sheriff's department. We have 2 DARE officers. We do, and when they're doing the DARE program and in the middle of the DARE program, we try to go as much as possible. We make every effort to make stops at the schools during the day just to do a walkthrough school visit. Let the kids see you, know that you're there, know that that you're going to be there, that you're close, that you're watching the school. We do a lot of PR stuff with the kids too, just different things in our community. Now, we have a pretty big county. Our county for down here is pretty big. It's 840 square miles. So there's a lot of area to cover. And there's only 8 of us on the road.
Wow.
So,
Oh, wow.
So what, I mean, does that affect, how does that affect your guys' response? I mean, as far as, and again, I'm speaking as somebody who lived there for a while, but I mean, let's say that you're down in Dexter and you get a call to advance. I mean, what kind of response time? I mean, that obviously is probably another challenge that you guys have to face in a super isolated zone.
It is. Our response times, we usually don't have a whole lot of problems with our response times. Now, it never fails that you can be in advance and get a call out in the county in Bernie. And you have one main highway that runs through the middle of this county, and as well as I do, that's 25 highway. And these other 2 guys that are on here can attest to it as well. Just because you're running that siren and them pretty lights on top of that car doesn't mean everybody's going to get out of your way.
Right. Okay.
What out there you got to worry about deer and Bigfoot
while
you're on the road.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sean,
yes.
I knew you had a couple more questions you want to throw at him too. So.
Yeah. Well, the first thing when he mentioned dare, that kind of brought it up for you fellas in Illinois. Now that marijuana is recreationally legal in the state, are you guys able to partake? Is the county allow you guys to use it for medicinal purposes?
No.
Sheriff, it looks like you got some rules to change in the
yeah
for the county.
And I'll go ahead and I'll piggyback on that one too. With the recreational, with the approval of the and of course we have our dispensaries local, and I know we have in Barry we have a manufacturing plant there. What kind of new issues are you having to deal with the legalization of that? Sheriff, we'll start with you.
Right now, it's being treated almost like an illegal transportation of alcohol, where more arrests now are because of the way they're transporting it. In the state of Illinois, it has to be in a scent-proof container. So if somebody's just carrying it in their rolled up baggie, if they roll down the window, you can smell it. It's obviously not in a scent-proof container. It's kind of like when they roll down the window and you smell alcohol. So it's treated the same way. It's pretty much the same statute. And not the same statute, but it's treated the same way with the fines and all that as an illegal transportation of alcohol, which is open container of alcohol in the vehicle.
So are you guys seeing an increase in those kind of arrests then since the legalization?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Clint, what kind of challenges are you seeing on the city level with that?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. Everybody thinks that it's just because it's legal, they can carry it. And 9 out of the 10 arrests for cannabis is because they don't have it in that scent-proof, odor-proof, child-proof container. So it's really the biggest problem that we have. We don't see a massive. We don't see a massive amount of cannabis being hauled through. It probably does, but the problem lies in that law.
Straight to Andy's house, where he's higher than a giraffe's ass most days. But that's what it is.
Shush.
It's pretty high.
So yeah. Well, no, and I wanted to say for especially like you guys out in Illinois, most of the problems and law passing that you see are just coming straight from Travis's lovely town of Chicago. That's I feel like where most of the problems stem there. That the trickle effect happens for you guys. Whenever a big thing that we see, and rarely do people in big inner cities, I feel like some of them just they don't get a grip on reality when it comes to more rural communities. Places in Europe have police officers in big metropolitan areas that patrol without weapons. That they don't carry an actual gun on them whenever they're patrolling, but yet they still have QRF teams that are ready, fully armed on the goes. Do you guys anticipate or would see in the near future here in the States where police officers might become unarmed while patrolling? And do you see, if that was to happen, would you see more of an increase of martial arts training for you guys, or do you see anything like that happening in your guys' area?
I think that's something that the legislature would love to see, but I don't think it'll ever come to fruition. I think it's not realistic to be able to do that. And nowadays, the way things are now. But like you mentioned, Chicago, they're treating downstate, everything south of I-80, the same as they are treating the cities and stuff up in northern Illinois. I know we were talking about the schools. There's actually pending legislation right now to take police officers out of schools. For whatever reason, they don't like them up in Chicago. So they're telling us little rural communities that, we don't need a DARE officer at school because it's going to terrorize the kids. Unless they will allow it if there's a crisis going on. But other than that, but yeah, that stuff, I don't think it's going to ever come to reality. I know it would be a wish list on some legislators. So.
Do you think? I mean, and I hate to beat this dead horse, but I mean, when I look at when I grew up in a small town in central Illinois called Waverly, is where I spent most of my formative years. I mean, we still had respect for the police officers as a whole. I mean, and of course, Sheriff, I note that you're wearing your shirt, and I see a lot of those flags. How do you respond to and I am not one of these people who believe that, but I mean, I saw a meme on Facebook one time that said racist starter kits. And one of them was the back the blue or the American flag. I mean, how do you respond to people who have that kind of mentality?
I don't think you can get in arguments with people, but you're not going to change their minds. If they're that dead set on it, it's not even worth arguing about. You see on Facebook people trying to convince others of their political belief. It's just a waste of time. You're not going to change somebody's mind. If they want to believe that, let them believe it. There's no way I'm going to be able to change their mind. Right.
So, Mike, what is you're down in the South and you're in very red country down there, Republican country. Do you think how do you perceive, is there that degree of animosity, or do you see more of we still abide by the police and we still follow the police, and what kind of attitudes do you see in that part of the country down there?
And there's a mixture down here. And, I hate to use the excuse with the George Floyds and the Michael Browns and everything else, but it's affecting it. It's affecting everybody, and it's affecting everybody all over the world. Down here, it's the same way. You get a certain group of people, I guess you could say, that you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have trouble out of them because they just absolutely hate you. And hate is a very strong word, but there's no other way to say it. They just absolutely hate you. And that's fine. I embrace it. If that's the way you are, fine. So, I'm not going to try to change your mind.
Sean, did you have some things else there?
Well, the last thing, Andy, you got to understand, Kennett, Missouri got internet 4 months ago. So they're just finding out that, the George Floyd incident even just happened about 2 weeks ago. All right. So cut them some slack down there.
Well, lucky for me, that's another hour south of here. So I don't have to worry about that in another county too. So.
Oh, so that's nice. Yeah. You don't have to go to a Sheryl Crow stomping ground.
No.
Well, I guess, one of the quick things is I want to know exactly how much of an influence did Reno 911 have on you guys to become police officers? or if you guys have any, quick stories that you could speak on that, as the, incident unfolded, you were like, this is straight out of an episode of Reno 911.
Well, for me, it was more Super Troopers. So
okay, yeah.
I don't know. Lieutenant Dangle's he's pretty hip.
I could see you rocking them shorts, Sheriff. I could
That's
see you
right.
rolling around new boot goofing.
for sure.
Hey, I tell you what, we have a guy, and I promise you, I'm not lying. We have a guy that works for us. He's a detective. And when he grows a mustache every once in a while, he could pass for Ramathorn off Super Troopers. And I mean, like, to the T.
Yeah.
If I had a picture, I would show you. And I actually, kind of a funny story, when I worked in dispatch, he was going home one night. This is before he became a detective. I actually got him to say Car Ramrod Stoddard County over the radio. Greatest thing ever.
So
That is good.
And I'll follow up with that too. So who did you guys who would you say was your greatest influence? I know, Sheriff, you said earlier your grandfather. Who do you guys say is your greatest influence, or who pushed you the most, or what factor the most made you want to become a law enforcement officer?
Good question.
Whoever wants to jump on it.
Well, nobody ever pushed me. It's just something. I didn't become a police officer till I was 31. But it's just, like I mentioned before, my grandfather, it's just seeing how he lived, how he interacted with people, not just in law enforcement, just in everyday life. And police work is something I've always wanted to do. So I went for it when I was 31, and here I am.
Mm-hmm. Vinny, how about you?
Well, I got into it when I was around 31. That's when I started at dispatch. And it didn't take me very long. When I started doing ride-alongs with my deputies, I was hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I go to the calls with these guys, and the biggest thing for me was getting the support of my wife and my children.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you would not believe, and these guys can probably back me up on this. Having the support of your family is just absolutely amazing. Knowing what you're going to go through, the late nights, the bad days, the good days. I mean, having that support is just, it makes a world of difference. But my biggest influence was, he's now my corporal. I would ride with him more than anything, and go on to calls with him, because it seemed like it never failed. Every time I would ride with him, we'd get some pretty serious calls, and getting to see him in the line of work, and I was hooked.
Okay, Clint, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I started law enforcement when I was 20. So, and actually, Sheriff Greenwood's the one that got me the job. I worked for the previous sheriff, and I looked up to not only Sheriff Greenwood, but the previous sheriff. But for me, I've always, I want to continue to fight for what we have here in the United States of America, because we are the greatest country on the planet. And even though it looks like we're a hot mess right now, we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we wear this badge here, but there's guys that are overseas right now, and they're wearing a badge and they're fighting for us. And we're, I'm an American, and I'm proud of it. And I think I get up every day just wanting to fight for that. Maybe it's just in a small community, but I might not be able to change the whole world, but I can help change my world. And I think that's the attitude we need to have.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I remember in colleges when I enlisted to be a military police officer, my plan specifically was to become a civilian police officer. And then I worked one of my first Ferguson, protests and incidents like that. And I said, fuck that. These guys do the work. I'm too bitch made for anything like that. So I can say I from all of us, I can't speak on it enough. Thank you guys for everything that you do. I know it's not an easy job, and there's a lot of times it can be a thankless job. And so seriously, thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules, away from your families, just to have this conversation with us. Before we sign off, is there anything you guys would like to say to any of our listeners, or anything at all that you guys would like to add before we finish up?
No, not for me.
Well,
Yeah, just I guess my last tidbit for a listener out there would be just sit down and have a conversation with a police officer. That doesn't hurt as much as maybe you disagree with them, maybe you disagree with what's happening in our country, maybe you disagree with law enforcement, but listen, I've always said this: conversation is always better than condemnation, and just conversing and having a conversation with somebody. That's the problem with our country is if you disagree with somebody, then you can't ever talk to them again. And that is so warped.
mm-hmm.
So I would just tell listeners, have a conversation with a police officer.
And you just addressed Clint right there. And I kind of explained this to you guys before when I was messaging you guys. That is the point, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because this is a point of our podcast, is to have the conversation. That's that Sean and I, when we were having our brainchild over this podcast, we've only been going since February, but when we discussed things in October, was the ability to be able to have a conversation instead of just pointing that finger at the police or pointing that thing. Let's sit down, and because that's with the advent of social media, with the advent of the cell phone, all that other stuff, I think we've forgotten we're afraid to have that conversation. I'm glad you brought that point up. Vinny, you got anything you want to share or anything else?
No, I agree with Clint. Sit down and have a conversation with one of us.
Okay.
If it strikes you and you get a little bit of curiosity, jump in the car and go for a ride along. Put yourself in our shoes for a couple hours. Just check it out.
Mm-hmm.
See what we got to deal with. See what we go through. Mm-hmm. It might change your perspective on things.
Mm.
And bring some donuts with you if you do it.
Absolutely. I
Yes.
completely agree
Yes,
with
there-
that.
there-
I was just about to say, folks, make sure that you do take your donuts and coffee to your local law enforcement, because there's never enough fat cops with caffeine addictions out there. We always need more, and
Hey,
I think that
I didn't get that double chin right there, but I didn't donuts. I promise you that. That's what that's from right there.
you keep the Casey's Bakery busy. I like it.
That's right.
I like it. Well, gentlemen, thank you guys so much again. I'll say it again. I'll say it 100 times. Thank you for everything that you do. To the boys out there in Illinois, I hope you guys get your marijuana smoking ability soon. I'm still a National Guard soldier, so unfortunately for me, I will have to do without for the next 5.5 years. However, I have a calendar. I'm counting down the days. But gentlemen, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for joining us. For the folks at home, thank you all for sitting through and giving us a listen. Make sure to follow us at the Voice of Reason Podcast 2021 on Facebook, Spotify, and on YouTube. Mr. Andy, Travis, is there anything else that you two would like to add to our listeners?
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight, and thank you. I want to especially thank Clint for being able to get Sheriff David Greenwood on with us this evening, and to my former student, Michael Vincent. Buddy, it's good to see you after 17 years.
You too, my friend.
All right.
Yeah, it was awesome having you guys on. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks
you
you
for having
guys.
us.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys all next week. Thank you for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast.